Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Osborne. This is the new Tier 8 destroyer on this American tech tree line. It's been absolutely amazing playing these things. Playing against them is going to be difficult, but these new smokes are just incredibly fun. And the more I've played with them, the more I've absolutely enjoyed these ships. And the torpedoes aren't entirely useless on these ships, alright? Torping choke points, common areas DDs are going to go, is actually going to bail me out here. We get to use our smoke early and then shut it off, trying to get out of this bad situation. Perhaps playing too aggressive, but the Friesland takes the bait. He took too long on his hydro, and that ship is not particularly maneuverable. We're still able to take another engagement here, though, thanks to the smoke being back almost instantly. So this mass here, I'll take this fight. If it goes south, our smoke is already available. This is the absolute power of this line. It's not just the sap and the shell velocity and the DPM. It's this smoke that you can be so creative with. Notice where my teammates are also in this clip, by the way. King George, solid behind an island. Rodney is still in spawn. Massachusetts is getting here, but he spawned in the middle. We took that engagement while not really having much team support. Normally in a DD engagement, especially against a Friesland, which is a tier 9, one of the best gunboat DDs at that tier, we still managed to do really good work there. In a tier 8, Osborne is absolutely incredible. This line is shaping up to be awesome to grind all the way through with really no sour points. We'll see what the tier 7 is like in another video, but the tier 8 so far has been absolutely amazing. You still get the same caliber of guns here, so you retain the 137s, although we get 4 guns instead of 6 here. So the DPM does go down, but it's still 225,000 sap DPM, which more than outdoes everything at your tier with good shell velocity. Again, with these smokes, we take an engagement, smoke up, and then we drop our smoke rather quickly afterwards, and then the smoke is available again. I can even take a fight with a heavy cruiser at tier 8. Sure, we're not going to outright win this engagement, but we can get a little bit of chip damage in, and then when he starts to focus on us, well, we could just go dark instantly. There's not much of a penalty here in doing this with this smoke screen. I think the gunboat open water playstyle is going to look a lot like this. If you're going for the full range gunboat layout, you're going to just constantly be firing your guns. You get into a little bit of pressure, a little too much pressure to handle. You smoke up for a few seconds, and then you drop your smoke yet again. And then you can go spot for a bit, and a lot of that pressure will be relieved, and you can start opening up again. We also have surprisingly great concealment on the Osborne. Not only do we have some of the highest DPM at our tier, but we also get 6.2 kilometer best detection, which is not the best destroyer detection at tier 8. But 6.2 is very close to the standard 5.8, 5.9 we'd see on Benson, for example. Even 5.4 on Kagero does not give you a lot of time to deal with this ship and react to it. You won't be able to turn around in that distance if this ship is rushing at you. Very, very scary to deal with this new American line. The sap here is awesome into pretty much everything. There's a Missouri here, and guess what we pen? 38 millimeters. So he essentially has no armor against us. We can pen his upper belt, we can pen his deck armor, we can pen his bow, stern, superstructure. Wherever we hit, as long as it's not the main turrets or the belt armor for the Citadel, we really just are going to get a ton of full pens on this guy. That's kind of crazy to have that level of firepower on a destroyer. And not only that, but it's incredibly easy to use this DPM. We don't always want to just be sitting in smoke, though. That's, I guess, the weakness of this line, is that you don't have a ton of smoke for a very long match to just sit there and farm. So that's where we want to be using island cover to support this open water playstyle when we get on lower HP in these late games. I probably overpushed that game, a little too aggressive at the start, but we made it work. Unfortunately, you could tell we were not going to win this one. But this ship and this line is an absolute menace to deal with on the flank. How are you going to pin it down to finish it off when it always has smokes available to go dark? Well, it really comes down to having a radar. That's what's required here. Or I guess a carrier to constantly hover you with plane spotting, which did happen to me from time to time. And yes, it was very, very frustrating. But I'm going to leave that to the side. We all know that most DDs are going to struggle to carrier focus like that, so I wouldn't hold that too much against this line in general. Smoking up, and this enemy DD is still firing, so we can get some decent damage in. I've kind of pinched myself on this border, unfortunately. The Zara is not a ship that we want to be taking an open water engagement against. Sap from cruisers is going to hurt a lot at these closer ranges. That's why I'm staying in my smoke for a little bit longer. And this power to dictate the engagement, when does the engagement start, when does it end, is just one of the most powerful tools you have as a surface ship player in World of Warships. It's one of the most skill-intensive parts of the game, I think, is positioning and when to start an engagement if you have the concealment and disengage advantage that these smokes provide. There's not a lot of RNG involved. It's purely decision-making, which I love. I think that's really awesome. But it means that to get the most out of these ships, it's going to be a little bit difficult to play. Playing the open water max range gunboat playstyle like I have here is going to be quite a lot easier. This is where I've been trying to play more aggressive. I've been having a lot more fun at the close range, concealment, cap contester, flank contester playstyle, but it is certainly a lot harder to play. And as far as farming damage, it's not going to be quite as effective. This game, playing with full range, notice we have 15 kilometers of range. And just hypothetically, what if we compared to a Cleveland? Well, that's a tier 8 cruiser. And it's got worse shell velocity than us, and Cleveland has 244,000 HE DPM. We have 225,000 SAP DPM. That's pretty close. And that HE on Cleveland only pens 30 millimeters of armor, unless it takes IFHE. We pen 38. Not only that, but if you have the premium Azure Lane version, Montpellier, I don't know how to pronounce it, I apologize. The DPM is pretty much the same. We just have better shell velocity now on this one. It's basically a light cruiser without a citadel with destroyer level concealment and smokes that allow it to disengage. This line is absolutely incredible. The turret angles are actually awesome too here on the Osborne. At higher tier, you're going to notice, especially the tier 10, but even the tier 9, your kiting angles are pretty poor. You only get 40 degrees of rearward firing angles on the tier 9, 50 degrees on the tier 10. Here, though, we get 30 degrees. So Osborne is actually very well set up as an open water kiting gunboat. Very easy to hit targets, even at longer ranges, DDs like this. The shell velocity definitely supports this kind of playstyle. We only get 37 degrees of forward firing angles, though, so a little bit worse. Certainly the tier 9 having 25 degree forward is absolutely crazy. So a little bit worse at the pushing roll. You're going to notice that if you're grinding through this line in a couple months when it's out of early access, that the lower tier ones with the single turrets have better kiting angles, but maybe it struggles a little more pushing in. And then you get to the tier 9 and it just massively flips around. It's a little bit of weird inconsistency there with the line that you'll have to get used to. But I definitely do prefer the higher tier ones, even though I had some great experiences here with Osborne. And I just think that the single gun turrets feel a little bit less consistent. We still get great damage, pretty decent hit rate. It's just having only 4 guns versus going up to 6 at tier 9 and tier 10 adds to, I guess, subjective in the moment consistency. Maybe if it isn't that much better in practice on paper. But in the moment, these single turrets feel like they have a little bit worse dispersion, a little bit less consistency. Managed to hit another torp, a bit of achievement in this line for me. I've been really ignoring the torps and still doing very well. But I managed to get some more zoning torps there on that King George. We're going to turn our smoke off now and get into a bit of a kiting position. Fortunately, though, even though we get detected by this submarine yet again, we can open up. It's not a big deal because our smoke is back. Any other DD here, except maybe the British DDs, I wouldn't have opened up on that submarine because I would not have wanted to deal with the extra 20 seconds of detection that I gain when I shoot my main guns. I would have wanted to stay dark. I would have just hoped the submarine would have dove underwater and then I could go dark and reposition. Not so here because I can just use my smoke screen yet again to go dark quickly. Consumable can be deactivated in 3 seconds. Still wish the UI was a little more clear on that. When can I deactivate? When can I not? I saw a really good suggestion in the comments of an earlier video on this line that if you push the smoke button again, well, you can't deactivate it. Well, that would just maybe give the game a cue to automatically deactivate at the soonest possible moment. That would be a good way to do it as well. Again, we would need a UI tweak to make that a little bit more clear. It's nice to have these smokes, but The UI is a little bit awkward. As I played with it more, though, it hasn't been too bad. Just a bit of a learning curve there. Not quite going to hit this destroyer, but now we get into some more open water farming. Our team is down a little bit in this one, but we have so much HP. Notice how I've played a little bit more passive. I've been more aggressive on my smokes earlier on to save a lot more HP to this mid game, and now I get to abuse my range and damage. Because I have so much HP, I can play more aggressive. I can take these engagements where a rune is shooting at us at 13 kilometers. We're going to take some hits, but I'm not too worried. We still have enough HP to play this aggressive with our open water gunboat. I think that's maybe my biggest mistake with this line is playing too aggressive early, losing so much HP that I don't feel comfortable with this open water playstyle to carry the mid and late game. You're going to want to save some HP for these moments, as you'll see our damage and battle impact goes up quite a lot here. Not only are we getting the cap, but this just constant pressure. If they want to shoot at us, they're going to stay spotted, and we got a few ships around to help us out here. A couple battleships, a cruiser as well. And they're just going to be forced towards the back of the map. This DD is so strong. You can play that cruiser, DPM, pressure playstyle, but also play the concealment, cap contest, area contest of destroyers to open up map positions and push the enemy team back, like destroyers can when they're uncontested on a flank. It's tough to deal with these things, man. It really is. I'll be curious to fight against them as they're in early access, or more likely once they're out of early access in a couple months, everyone gets their hands on them, to see what the actual counters are. Maybe it's just that DDs die quickly when they're not played well. We don't have any healing here. Our concealment is good, but not best in class. And the smokes don't allow you to play the traditional sit in one spot and smoke up. So maybe we'll see a lot of people use the smokes continuously very early game, and then they're out of smokes for the mid and late game. Maybe, but that to me just would be a bit of a bad decision on playing the ship. If you play to these strengths and constantly have a bit of smoke in reserve to get you out of bad situations when you're open water gunboating, it's going to be really difficult to deal with these things. This King George here really having a tough time. I apologize to all these guys I'm playing against just with how insane this is. DDs that are open water gunboats like this are very frustrating to deal with as a battleship player, as you get one shot every 30 seconds or so. And considering their speed, maneuverability, and the ability to always disengage whenever they want to, it's tough, man. It's really tough. I should mention, actually, the maneuverability here is a little bit better yet again. The tier 10 seems to have the worst maneuverability so far. As you go up the line, you get a little bit clumsier, whereas with the Osborne here, we get 4.1 second rudder, down from 4.5 on the tier 9 Christopher, and then 5 seconds on the Burrows. And our turning radius is down again at 630 meters too. So even more maneuverable down at these lower tiers. I've managed to push myself into the enemy team's home cap here, all the while farming. And now we're, 7 kilometers away from Kansas. Could be a little scary if he opens up on us at this range. Could easily one-shot us with 12 guns like that. So we can just smoke up. And this time, I'm going to use this smoke a little bit more like a gearing smoke, or perhaps more like a Commonwealth smoke, allowing me to stay in one spot or move slowly, right? We can always move at quarter speed in these smokes and just get some farming in. Notice how this Kansas angles to me. Traditional advice recommends that you angle to sap, angle to AP, and it does reduce damage. But the pen angles are good enough, and he's kind of got square superstructure, I suppose. He can't angle to this. It's just full pens. Assuming I'm not hitting his belt or his turrets, I hit the superstructure at the stern of the ship. It's just going to be full pens. It's really tough to deal with sap. As you guys know, I really don't like sap in this game in general. I think it removes a lot of the tactical play of this game, where you have the consistency of HE, where it doesn't really matter the angle you're at, it's just going to do damage, all the while retaining the alpha damage of armor piercing. And the ability to pen more than HE means that my destroyer here, if I only had HE, I wouldn't be penning his upper belt, his deck armor, his bow, or his stern. I'd have to hit superstructure if I want the consistent full pens. Sure, we don't get the fires, but the amount of alpha damage we have, man, and the consistency to hit anywhere on this same tier battleship, it's just kind of wild to me that sap is like this in the game. It feels like it doesn't really matter what you do playing against it. It's all on the player who is controlling the SAP ship. And in this case, we have just so much more DPM than the Italian line and so much more range than the Italian line that it's going to be more frustrating to fight against. I don't find, personally, the Italian destroyers that frustrating to fight against because generally I don't see them that often. Maybe it's because, like me, a lot of you don't really find the playstyle all that comfortable. I, again, have just never really figured out a good playstyle to run with those Italian DDs. I just haven't enjoyed them, and they've been very challenging to play and get a lot of impact out of them in an open water gunboat playstyle, where Osborne and this entire line seems tailor-made to being that, what if Italian DDs had more DPM, more range, similar shell velocity, and still retained SAP, just with even more pen, at least until you get to the higher tier ones, where they also pen 38 millimeters of armor. And a pretty decent match here in the Osborne to carry this one back. Our teammates certainly helped us out a ton on the A flank. Having team support is crucial for any sort of DD playstyle, open water gunboating, or flanking torping roles too. Definitely helped me out a lot there. But the pressure we were able to provide, the annoyance, we had over 1 million potential damage here. That's damage that's not going into my larger ships, cruisers, battleships, that we can just avoid because we're so small and nimble, or we can just smoke up. Having the ability to use this smoke both as the quick bursty get out of a bad situation and for longer duration farming sessions, although limited in that role, you still can do it, was really useful in that game for dealing with that Kansas in particular. Now the last element here I want to show you is being far too aggressive early on. I'm not even pushing into the cap here, but my teammates are all pretty passive here behind islands. Understandably, it's a carrier game, and this cap is very exposed. I'm not blaming them at all for playing back. In fact, it's smart. And you'll see why I should probably not be playing so aggressive to try and get this enemy destroyer. They get a lot of damage in on me before I'm able to slow down in my smoke, and then there's even more damage coming in as either flight times or a bit of blind fire. You're a large destroyer still. It's not the smallest ship. We can take a lot of damage. We're going to push out here, though, and unfortunately, this poor enemy DD gets plane spotted. Yes, plane spotting, always an issue. Still going to be an issue if they do the carrier rework and they don't fix plane spotting. I mean, that guy was going to get away in any other game as long as there's not a carrier. And yet, we were able to finish him off there, unfortunately for him. And I also want to mention, too, torpedoes, still incredibly useful. If we didn't have torps, people can rush your smoke. They can rush you around islands, where if you have torpedoes, it's a great way to deter enemy ship from pushing you out of aggressive positions around islands or in your smokes. It's really useful to have, even if these torps are a massive downgrade over the mainline American DDs. And as for the builds here on this line, with the tier 8 here, I wasn't actually able to get really anywhere close my recommended build or my favorite build, as I was limited to 17 points here. In that last game, or that middle game that we covered, I ran this one, trying to go as much gunboat as I could, but notice we couldn't even get the 5% extra DPM here. I'm missing out on 5% DPM from the full range DPM build here. That's quite a lot to buff this up. Of course, Concealment Expert is also a good option. My preferred build on this line so far looks like this. I think the 13 kilometers you get on Burrows, the 12.8, and then Osborne gets down to 12.5. I think that's more than enough. So for me, I like having the concealment to play the more aggressive role, and then take Fearless Brawler to really push caps and enjoy the intense close range battle that you can do with these and the creativity you can have with these smokes. I really, really, really like that. But I wasn't able to maximize that in this early access video, unfortunately. But once I do have more higher level commanders to put on these ships, the test ships just don't give me that option. That's what I would run. Although, if you don't want to play with concealment, you don't necessarily have to. This is wrong, by the way. It is 6.2. This is early stuff in testing. They don't always update the port stuff when they buff or nerf ships. So this would be 6.2. Then you could swap concealment over to extra range and then just take Fearless Brawler. Either one. If you want to play a little closer, do Concealment Brawler. If you want to play further, do Range Brawler. Those would be my recommendations here. And while it is recommended to take Grease the Gears, something that's kind of funny is your Turchiverse even stock is much better than the Italian line as well. Poor Italian DDs, man. They're rough. In my opinion, they're rough. I've never really got onto those ones, unfortunately. And this line just, it's so much easier to play, man. It really is. These things are awesome. And the upgrades looked a little something like this. I am running the extra engine boost here just because it's really nice for open water playstyles to have more duration on this. Plus 10% gets us up over 40 knots for a period of time, and buffs our acceleration too to do some speed juking. This turning circle radius and rudder is enough to do a lot of speed juking in this ship. And 12.5 or up to 15 kilometers is absolutely ridiculous. There is no way to buff the duration of this smoke generator. I've tried all sorts of different things. You can't slot smoke mod. This flag doesn't work. I think ideally it should have this little canceled out sign, or it's just not effective. Ideally, I think that would be a good idea for wargaming to implement, as well as on your commander. This upgrade here doesn't affect anything, although this one does. Gives you your smoke back 7.5 seconds quicker. So that's good, but consider that your cooldown is already like 20 seconds or something like that. This isn't quite right. Again, they buffed or changed this, I believe. So a little bit different stats in port here, unfortunately, for me to talk about. The sap is incredible on this one. Still get those 137s. This ship is crazy. We'll take a look at the tier 7 as well, because that one goes down to 127 mil guns while still also having sap. Could be an interesting look at a more balanced version of this line without such insane pen and shell velocity on the guns. I'm curious to see how those play. But for now, that's going to do it for the tier 8 here. Unfortunately, they are in early access, and with all early access to tech trees, I do not recommend you engage with it at all. Just wait the 2 months out and then grind it for free like any other normal tech tree ship. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.